Hey, I'm some nobody, and if I'm being 100% honest, I knew creepypasta content was popular on YouTube, but I did not expect that creepypasta rules video to blow up the way it did. It got over 500,000 views, but it sadly has a lot more views than some of the content I talked over in that video. What's going on, guys? I told you to go watch the originals. Why does that video have more views than Don't Go to Walmart at 4 a.m.? Injustices of the world aside, I was really hesitant to make this follow-up video. Making more of something just because it's what the people want, that's not how a real artist does it. But then I remembered what I make ain't art, so here we are. Welcome to Rules to Survive in the Creepypasta World Volume 2. Here's a brief summary. I got really into watching SFM animations of creepypastas, and I noticed that creepypasta monsters will clip you over the most ridiculous things. So just like the first video, I've collected a few SFM animations of creepypastas. You and me are gonna go through them together, and if you can't figure out what the message of the creepypasta is, it's because you're stupid. But luckily for dummies like you, geniuses like me exist, and we use our intelligence to help out the less brainly. So I'll tell you the moral of the story. And we're gonna start off with one I picked purely out of spite, because in the first video, when I said Jeff the Killer was the most popular creepypasta, everybody and their mother was in the comments saying, no, it's actually Slenderman. And no matter how many times I said Slenderman is not a creepypasta character, they wouldn't hear of it. Listen, the Slenderman is an internet horror character, but that doesn't mean he's a creepypasta character. He was not popularized, nor does he originate from a creepypasta. I'm sure there are creepypasta about the Slenderman, but you wouldn't call Sonic the Hedgehog a creepypasta character just because there's creepypasta about him. But despite the fact that I'm 100% right, fine, let's talk about...
As I turned around, my worst fear came true. No!
Right off the bat, I want to apologize to DN Bray for using his second animation ever. If another YouTuber used one of my first videos in their video, I'd blow their head smooth off. Regardless, there really isn't too much to the story of this animation. It's kind of just an animated recreation of playing a game of Slender the 8 Pages. A guy wakes up in the middle of the woods with a video camera and finds himself stalked by a tall, faceless guy in a suit. Inevitably, he stumbles across Slenderman's calling card, the fucking pages. But despite Slenderman's catchphrase, collect my fucking pages, you really don't want to do that. Because Slenderman actually gets more aggressive the more pages you find, so rule 1 of volume 2 is don't collect the pages. But here's the thing, Slenderman also gets more aggressive the longer you go without collecting a page, so rule 2 is collect the pages. That's right, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Now, I know what you're thinking, some nobody, those two rules contradict each other. If I find myself stuck in the Slender Forest, what am I supposed to do? And my response to what you're thinking is, oh, you want him to be a creepypasta character so bad, but now you got a problem following his rules? Slenderman doesn't like it when you take his pages, but he also doesn't like it if you don't give a shit about the pages. But fine, since nothing is ever good enough for you people, you'll be happy to know that the next rule, informed by a distant relative of the Slenderman, will actually help you survive against the Slenderman as well.
As my eyes widened, standing at the bottom of our driveway was a very tall, black figure.
Before any of you can say anything, yeah, the scout kinda looks like Fortnite Jonesy here. Get over it. People are allowed to look like Fortnite Jonesy, bigot. Regardless of his appearance, Jonesy explains to us that on 4 separate occasions he has seen something outside his house. And as the title would suggest, it only appears on the absolute rainiest of nights. Jonesy first saw it when he was only 8 years old and still the kid from that TF2 comic. And his description of the creature is actually quite reminiscent of the Slenderman. 8-foot tall humanoid, extremely skinny, quite lanky, lacking any visible features and being entirely one color. The only 2 differences between this creature and the Slenderman is that the Slenderman wears a suit, whereas this creature seems to be completely naked, and Slenderman's white and this creature's black. Now I can't explain the suit. Most creatures don't wear suits, demonic or otherwise, but I believe the color difference is as simple as Slenderman lives in a rural area and the Rain Lurker here lives in Chicago. On this first encounter, all the Rain Lurker does is stand at the end of Jonesy's driveway and look up at his window, which admittedly is pretty weird, and I can't really blame Jonesy for going and telling his parents. His dad peeks his head outside and then turns right back around and says, you just had a bad dream, go back to sleep. Fast forward to after his cocooning, and Jonesy has now become a fully grown 14-year-old Jonesy. He peeks out the window again and he sees the rain lurker for a second time standing in his yard, but ultimately not really doing anything. Now, waking your parents up in the middle of the night because you saw a monster as an 8-year-old is pretty cute. As a 14-year-old, they send you to a psychiatrist. After the incident at 14, Jonesy makes the rain lurker his hyperfixation, and all of his friends get sick of him because it's all he talks about. So they ostracize him because as Chicagoans, they got more important things to talk about, like deep dish pizza. 2 years later, at 16, Jonesy wakes up in the middle of a rainstorm yet again and looks outside his window. This time, the rain lurker isn't anywhere near Jonesy's house, he's just walking down the street dragging a trash bag behind him. Jonesy comments that it looks like a body, but it's probably just trash. The rain lurker may be a monster, but he's also from Chicago, so he probably eats a lot of deep dish pizza. I've never had it myself, but I imagine deep dish is pretty messy, so I bet the rain lurker goes through paper towels quick. Regardless of what the rain lurker is up to, Jonesy tries to take a picture of him with his phone, but unfortunately he has Android. After this incident, Jonesy spends over $1,000 on a high-def night vision camera and sets it up near his window permanently. And no matter how much his parents beg him to take down the creep camera and stop filming the neighbors, Jonesy absolutely refuses, because what if it rains? Well, after 3 years of being the neighborhood pervert, Jonesy finally gets his wish and a heavy rain kicks in when he's 19. And instead of just looking at Jonesy's house or throwing out trash, the rain lurker decides to protect the kids of the neighborhood by punching through Jonesy's window. His parents finally believe him, the police investigate and determine that he couldn't have done it himself, and his family spends a few nights at a hotel and then installs some security cameras. So what do you think is the lesson of this creepypasta? You take a second to think about it. I'm going to break down the chain of events, and when I'm done, I'm going to reveal the answer and you can see if you got it right. When Jonesy was 8 years old, he looked outside his window, the rain lurker was just standing there. When Jonesy was 14 years old, he looked outside his window, the rain lurker was just standing there. When Jonesy was 16 years old, he looked out his window and the rain lurker was just walking down the street. 3 separate instances where the rain lurker may have been scary, but there was no evidence of malice. What was different about the 4th encounter? I can tell a few of you already got it and a few of you aren't even paying attention, but that's right, the camera. Over the course of 11 years and 3 different encounters, the rain lurker does not attack Jonesy one time until he is being recorded. So think on the rain lurker's similarities to Slenderman and think about the one thing outside of the pages that's consistent with Slenderman. His ability to fuck with cameras, the static that accompanies him, because every time we've ever seen the Slenderman, he is being recorded. The stuff with the pages is exclusive to Slenderman, but we can tell from the rain lurker that seems to be a similar species of creepypasta monster that this species just hates being recorded. And that is why Rule 3 of Volume 2 is don't film people without their consent. And if I'm being honest, I'm with Creepypasta World on this one. I know what your knee-jerk reaction to the title here is. Some know by, wasn't there a Subway-related creepypasta in the last Volume 2? Shouldn't the rule just be avoid the subway? My answer to that is, what are you gonna do, drive? Walk? Take the bus? In this creepypasta, our main character is waiting for a late-night train, and when it shows up, he gets on and there's only 2 other guys on the train. An old dude stinking up the whole train car with his cigarette and a guy with his hood up and pink eye. The dude with pink eye is staring at our main character unflinchingly, but don't get too excited. You gotta remember, this is a creepypasta, not yaoi. You don't want to know what you gotta do to survive the yaoi world. The lights on the train go out temporarily and we find out our main character is afraid of the dark. That doesn't really matter though. When the lights come back on, the guy with pink eye is sitting only 2 seats away from him. And the smoker lets out one of them coughs that you can only cough if you've been smoking 3 packs a day for the last 45 years. This dude and the cigarette monster from the last video are probably old pals. Despite that, the pink-eyed dude is still staring at our main character, potentially longingly. Maybe this is yaoi. Now so far this may not seem like it takes place in Creepypasta World because a weird guy staring at you on public transportation isn't exactly otherworldly. But then the lights go out again and when they come back on, the guy with pink eye is right in our main character's face. and our main character reacts by yelling, "What in the blue hell is wrong with you, you sick, perverted, demented, sweat hog jabroni freak?" Pink Eye doesn't respond, but the old dude says, "Hey, if you wanted me to put out the cigarette, you didn't have to be mean about it, you didn't have to yell, you could have asked." But when our main character clarifies he's not talking to the smoker, but instead talking to the guy with pink eye, the smoker is confused, and he says, "Kid, we're the only two people on this train." And the story ends with the lights going out one more time. So what did our main character do wrong that got this pink-eyed ghost to make his eye really itchy, presumably? Well, the way I see it, class, it's not about what our main character did, it's about what he didn't. The lesson lies with the only person on the train car that didn't have to get special eye drops the next day, the old man smoking. Because when our main character got on the train, the old man and the pink-eyed demon were already on there, but the pink-eyed demon didn't bother the smoker once. I believe the stench of the cigarette, and more importantly the old man's cough, is what led to the demon deciding, I don't want to deal with this guy. We know smoking by itself isn't enough to ward off a creepypasta monster, but it would seem the lesson of this story and rule number 4 is be disgusting on public transportation. Our main character gets on the train, he's very well dressed, he sits very politely, he doesn't bother anybody, of course he's going to be an easy target for the pink-eye demon. But the old man was probably hacking up a lung as he got on the train and then immediately lit up a cigarette. If the demon struggles to approach an old smoker, imagine if he got on the train and just immediately scratched his balls and sniffed his fingers.
When my apartment building fell under new management, they placed a suggestion box in the lobby.
This next one is, I believe, the newest creepypasta animation I'm talking about today, so I'd really appreciate if y'all went and showed this one some love. Our narrator tells us that his apartment building has recently come under new management, and the new management has installed a suggestion box in the lobby. And usually suggestion boxes are nothing more than a great way to trick your tenants or your employees into thinking that you'll actually listen to them. But the managers of this apartment building take the suggestion box extremely seriously, usually fixing the issues the day after the suggestion is put in. So our narrator puts in a complaint about 2 of his neighbors. A woman whose dog barks too much despite the fact that dogs aren't allowed in the building, and a man who plays his music too loud. Just like every other issue he's brought to the suggestion box, the next day the problem is solved. There's no barking and there's no music, so he goes into his apartment and he sparks up a fat blunt to celebrate. Still riding the high he got from being a tattletale narc, he puts in another suggestion about his broken intercom. But after that, he finds out that his landlord took care of his noise complaint by killing both the dog and the guy that was playing his music too loud. And that's when we find out that evidently the weed he smoked the other night was some absolute gas. It was loud as fuck because somebody put in a complaint about it. And our scab main character gets exactly what he deserves because his landlord tells him through his intercom that weed isn't allowed via the building code, and we see a guy put a gun to the back of our main character's head. And I can only assume the guy with the gun has a gas mask on because our main character's apartment smells like if you put Snoop Dogg in the back of the mystery machine. Now you could be forgiven for not immediately getting the message for this one because there's quite a few misdirections. I'm not going to forgive you, but somebody might. But I could see how you could get the moral of don't smoke weed or always know the building code. Because those morals would keep our main character alive in the short term, but there is a grander lesson you should learn from this. Never trust a landlord. Thinking you and your landlord are cool will cost you your life in the creepypasta world and your deposit in the real world. Yet another subway-related creepypasta, but I'm just going to jump ahead of this right now. The rule is still not, don't use the subway. We got a nice change of pace this time around because this creepypasta primarily takes place in the subway station rather than on the train. Our main character is this businessman and he takes note of a homeless guy sitting in the corner of the station holding out a cup begging for change. A bigger girl walks past the homeless guy and Business Billy hears him call her a pig. Wow, what a fucking dickhead, Billy thinks to himself, but then a regular businessman walks past the homeless guy and the homeless guy calls him a human. No fucking shit he's a human, slapnuts, what you saying? Billy thinks to himself. The next morning, Business Billy is now intrigued by this homeless man and awkwardly stands a few feet away from him so he can listen in on what he's saying. A skinny guy walks past and the homeless man calls him a cow. Cow? You call that turkey-necked bitch a cow? Billy thinks to himself. Then the absolute goat, Coach from Left 4 Dead 2, walks by and the homeless man calls him a potato. This infuriates Business Billy so much that at work all he can think about is the homeless man and how to get back at him for disrespecting Coach from Left 4 Dead 2. After a few more days of observation, Business Billy decides to just walk up to the homeless man and ask him, hey, what's the big idea? The homeless guy explains that he has a psychic ability. With just one look, he can tell what you last ate. Which is why he called Business Billy bread when he walked up, because for breakfast that day, Billy ate toast. Business Billy laughs at how absolutely useless that psychic ability is, and the animation reminds us of the horrifying twist. The businessman a few days earlier whom the homeless man had called a human. I really like this creepypasta in written form because that stinger at the end isn't there. You only realize it's scary because you're reading it on the Creepypasta wiki. If somebody were to just copy and paste this into a forum, the fact that there is a cannibal businessman might slip your mind entirely. Regardless, this is probably the toughest lesson we've had the entire day. I doubt any of you are going to guess this before I say it. There isn't a clear and present threat in the story, so it's hard to say who did something wrong. But I want to put a little thought in your mind, a little question that you might want to ask. This homeless man has this psychic ability that he knows is real. He is not bullshitting. Useless as it may seem, it is undeniably a psychic ability. But he's still homeless. If a fake psychic can get a TV show and millions of dollars, a real psychic should have no problem with that. I'm not too surprised at that though, because he's clearly terrible at marketing this psychic ability because he's just saying it under his breath as people walk by. He doesn't have a sign, he's not calling out to people. If he was going, hey, I bet I can tell you what you last ate, and if I get it right you give me $1, he could be making a living. But forget using his power for monetary purposes. More important than that, he has this psychic ability that, again, he knows is real. He knows he's not lying. And a cannibal just walked past him. And he did absolutely jack shit. I'm not saying he should have ran the guy onto the subway tracks, but he didn't tell the cops. He didn't do anything about it. I'm not saying the cops would instantly take a homeless man claiming to have a psychic ability at his word. I'm just saying. The psychic knows this guy eats people and he just doesn't give a fuck, meaning that he's probably run into dozens of other cannibals and he just doesn't give a fuck. So again, actual provable psychic ability and you're broke, you're homeless, and you're not using it to save people. And that's why I'm going to say that Rule 6 is don't waste your potential like this guy. Because let me tell you something, brother, the main diet of a cannibalistic businessman consists of escorts and homeless people. You either gotta use your psychic ability to get off the streets or get him before he gets you.
A few weeks ago, this new guy started. I'll call him Jeremy. Jeremy's weird.
Most of these videos and these stories are predicated upon a twist, but this video is 15 minutes long. What that means is if you listen to me talk about this one before you go watch it for yourself, there's a lot more for me to ruin. Like for example, if you didn't hear from our narrator himself that he works at a gas station in rural Pennsylvania, I just ruined that for you. You will never get to experience him saying that even though the job's pretty boring, it's pretty easy too, and it pays alright. After that, he explains that a few weeks ago, a guy named Jeremy started working at the gas station, and he doesn't talk much, which means he's a disgusting freak that everybody hates. Our narrator and his boss both talk about Jeremy behind his back and agree that he's got the creepiest laugh they've ever heard. And once product starts going missing, they both suspect it's Jeremy because obviously anybody who is shy or an introvert is that way because they're up to no good. Also, the motor oil always goes missing after Jeremy's shift. Jeremy, I tried to stick up for you, man, come on. The boss knows it's Jeremy, but he has no proof. One night, the boss's daughter has a softball game, so he offers to pay our narrator overtime under the table to check the tapes for him. Since the villain of the story is named Jeremy, I'm going to call our narrator Steven for the rest of the video, and we're going to see who knows ball. Steven takes the tapes home and starts reviewing the footage of Jeremy's last shift. In the first hour of the shift, Steven takes note of 3 customers. Mrs. Templeton coming in at 4:03, getting a pack of cigarettes and a newspaper, paying with a 20. Ron comes in at 4:23, he fills up his motorcycle and gets a bag of beef jerky, pays with his credit card. And a trucker in a cowboy hat that gets $40 worth of diesel pays with a $100 bill at 4:55. There are more customers than just these 3, but these are the 3 Steven takes note of. Which is why when Mrs. Templeton comes back in at 5:03 and gets another pack of cigarettes and another newspaper and pays with another 20, Steven's like, that's kinda weird, but she probably has dementia. There's nothing wrong with taking advantage of older folks with diminished mental faculties. That's an entire industry in some countries. But when Ron comes in again at 5:23, gets more gas for his motorcycle, more beef jerky, and more charges on his credit card, that's when Steven starts thinking this is kinda weird. But Steven manages to rationalize it by saying, you know what, man, people are getting Alzheimer's younger and younger every single day. It's a serious issue. But when the guy with the cowboy hat comes back in at 5:55, gets $40 worth of diesel, and pays with another $100 bill, that's when Steven is officially freaked out. Everybody knows cowboys have the sharpest minds on the planet. They don't suffer from mental decline the way other people do, so something's amiss. And amiss something is because every hour of Jeremy's shift is an exact replica of the first hour of his shift. The exact same customers come in on the dot hour after hour, getting the same thing, paying the same way. Steven can tell that Jeremy didn't watchdogs the camera and just loop the footage over and over because he can see the shadows and knows the sun is going down as the day goes by. But even though the customers are looping, Jeremy himself isn't. He's doing everything he's supposed to do. Whoever's opening after Jeremy is coming into an absolute dream. Jeremy closes, locks up, then at exactly 12:03 he does the sus guy face on one of the cameras, and all the motor oil just instantly disappears off the shelf. The next day, Steven shows his boss the proof that Jeremy is sus, and the boss agrees to vote him out at the next meeting. But Jeremy doesn't show up for work, and the boss and Steven wind up stuck in a time loop for about 4 hours while waiting for him. Steven is freed from the loop at 9:33, and when he gains consciousness, all of time is stopped until he gets far enough away from the gas station. Once the boss is free from the time loop, he calls the cops show up, they get Jeremy's address from his application, but when they go there, it's an empty lot. But the empty lot actually has a ton of lore behind it. There was a whole Yakuza war back in 1988 over, and in 1993 a house that was there burned down. See, the family that used to live in that house, they had this son that was very quiet and not very outgoing, so they rightfully shunned him and pretended he didn't exist. An investigation uncovered that the entire house was soaked in oil before being ignited with a Molotov cocktail. And just off the record for a second, Jeremy, if you're listening, you traveled to the future to get flammable materials to set your house on fire and kill your family. Alright, whatever, if that's what you're into. You decide that the easiest thing to steal, to use to set your house on fire, is motor oil. And you work at a gas station. The flash point of motor oil is about 216 to 252 degrees, meaning that's how hot it would have to be for its vapors to be ignitable. The flash point of gasoline is negative 43 degrees, meaning if gasoline exists, its vapors are ignitable. That's why motor oil is considered a combustible rather than a flammable, because it's my understanding that it needs to be really, really hot before you can set anything on fire with it. That means in order to burn his house down with motor oil, Jeremy had to get his house to at least 250 degrees, which, I'll be honest with you, at that point, do you even really need to set it on fire? Back on the record, the boss wants Steven to come into work because the FBI are here and they got some questions. Steven goes in, tells the FBI agents everything, and one of the FBI agents remarks, "Oh Christ, we got another one. There's another time loop over here, fellas." God damn, working in the time loop department makes the dimensional breach department look like a dream. The FBI makes Steven sign an NDA about the time loop he was in and they send him on his way. But then the horrifying twist of the story is revealed when it ends with Steven starting the story over from the beginning, revealing that he is actually in a much bigger time loop. This video is a good example of one of my favorite things about Cirque, which is that they always go for the more out there horror. I'll be honest with you, class, this one threw me for a loop for a while, and you guys know how fucking smart I am. My very first thought, my surface level examination, was don't get a job. Steven would have never been in that time loop if he didn't have a job, right? Don't get too excited, you bums. I've decided that having a job in Creepypasta world is alright, which means fill out those applications, buddy. My next thought was perhaps that Jeremy was in league with the IRS, because if you remember, Steven was only watching the tapes because his boss was paying him overtime under the table. That is a lot of income you aren't kicking up to the big mang, so I wouldn't be surprised if they put you in a time loop for it. And I was fully ready to go ahead with that idea, but then I realized Steven isn't the only character in the story. You gotta think, Mrs. Templeton, Ron, the cowboy hat guy, the FBI agents, the boss, the cops, even Jeremy to an extent. They're all stuck in this time loop where Steven has to watch the tapes for his boss because his boss's daughter has a softball game and Jeremy is suspected of stealing. So the lesson isn't don't have a job or don't cheat the IRS. Instead, I think the lesson is found in the one day where Steven was aware that he was in a time loop, when he got out of the time loop at 9:33 and time was frozen. Now class, who remembers what Steven did to escape Jeremy's time fuckery? Alright, I don't see anybody putting their hands up, so I'm just gonna come out and say it, kinda disappointing you guys. He got away from the gas station. On top of that, Mrs. Templeton, Ron, the cowboy hat guy, all of them got trapped in this time loop just for going to the gas station to get gas or get snacks. And that's why I'm going to say, rule number 7 is, don't go to the gas station. If you do make the mistake of going to the gas station, make sure you pick out a good snack because you're going to be getting that snack every day for the rest of eternity. This creepypasta starts off with our main character saying that for the last month she has been trying to get her friend Mason to come explore the old abandoned mine with her. Since we got a female protagonist here who really wants to go into the mines, I'm going to be calling her Alex for the rest of this creepypasta. Alex explains that everybody in town believes the old mine is actually haunted. Or at least something along those lines. Not all the rumors about the mines are supernatural, but the point is everybody in town is afraid to go near this thing. One rumor is that it's a uranium mine, and if you walk in, you instantly get super cancer, and another rumor is that after the Civil War, the town used it as a place where they could torture and kill slaves instead of freeing them. So any whitey that walks in there immediately gets killed by the vengeful spirits. The town is so afraid of this place that even the cops refuse to go up there. Alex doesn't give a shit though. She wants to go explore this place. She doesn't care about vengeful spirits or any form of cancer. Unfortunately, her friend Mason is, in her own words, a pathetic, timid coward. It's at this point that Alex reveals the only reason she's friends with Mason is because he used to sell her drugs. He quit dealing about a month ago and got a job working on a train or something. Alex finally decides to put her foot down and bust out the old reliable for toxic people. Do this thing for me or we are done forever. Pro tip, if anybody ever tries to threaten you with being done with you forever, tell them to get the fuck gone. Mason unfortunately does not do that because presumably Alex is his only friend and she's broken down his esteem enough to make him think he can never make another friend. And Alex already mentioned that Mason is a pretty shy dude, so even though his only friend is only friends with him because he used to sell her drugs, he values that friendship above all else. So later that night, they meet up at the old abandoned mine. They bring flashlights and Mason brings snacks, which, believe it or not, Alex has a fucking problem with. Then Alex makes Mason do all the work of prying the boards off the entrance so they can crawl in. They explore the old mine for a bit and eventually they come across an elevator shaft with no elevator, just a shaft. Mason's starting to feel himself a little bit that he explored the one place everybody in town is afraid to go into, but that's when Alex reveals her real agenda. She does not actually yearn for the mines, she yearns for crystal meth. I'm just guessing meth because if it's a former Confederate town that would rather kill slaves than free them, they probably fuck with meth heavy. Alex has been trying to get Mason to come exploring with her coincidentally ever since he stopped selling drugs. She reveals that her and Daryl, Mason's former boss, set this whole thing up because Mason promised to work for him forever and instead went and got a real job. So Alex fucking kills Mason, pushing him down the elevator shaft, smiling over the fact that he screams the whole way down. And she starts leaving pleased as punch, talking about how Daryl is going to be so proud of her and will probably slide her a bit of crystal as a reward. Now I know a lot of you are probably thinking, this doesn't really sound like it happened in the Creepypasta world. This exact thing happened to my cousin Julius. No, this story is definitely in the Creepypasta world because as Alex is leaving, she hears a bunch of monstrous screeching coming from the elevator shaft. Alex sprints out of the mine as fast as she can, and as soon as she's outside, she hears an otherworldly voice coming from inside. And the voice says, "Thank you. We've been so hungry." And I mean, like, I could cook, I got the stuff in the house, but I really just don't feel like it, and I don't want to pay those door dashing fees. It's just kind of nuts. So we've long since established that you don't have to do anything morally wrong for a creepypasta monster to come after you, and these creepypasta monsters certainly prove that point. It's really funny to imagine Alex posting this online trying to tell people about her scary supernatural encounter, and everybody just replies to it like, "You killed your friend for drugs?" Anybody pick up the moral for this one? You got your hand up. Don't ever trust a woman. Hey, maybe if this was rules to survive in the real world, am I right, fellas? I'm kidding around, ladies, that's not the lesson. Some of you might be thinking, well, maybe the lesson is you should stand up for yourself, because if Mason just told Alex to fuck off when he had the chance, she wouldn't have got the opportunity. That's a good lesson, but it's not the right one here. You have to remember, the second Mason stopped working for him, Daryl was putting a plan into action to have him killed. Yeah, using Alex for it may have worked this time, but hypothetically, if it didn't, you think he'd just stop? I bet Daryl's got shooters all over the Confederacy, and the demons at the bottom of the mine shaft were more than happy to devour a guy that was just trying to live an honest life. The real moral of the story and the next rule on the list is don't try to escape poverty. There is nobody that demons love snacking on more than somebody that's trying to get their life together.
The pry bar snapped in two.
This is the second to last creepypasta we're going to be talking about today, and it's probably the most egregious. See, Kevin just moved into his new house, and we can only assume he's renting because there's no ghoul present trying to kick his ass. Regardless, Kevin has a lot of boxes to unpack, and in this pile of boxes is one he doesn't recognize. A small wooden crate with a lid, not unlike the mystery box from Call of Duty Zombies. Kevin shakes the titular unmarked box like a kid on Christmas morning, and even though it sounds like there's a bunch of shit in there, it doesn't sound like the Xbox is in there, so he should just throw it in the trash. Kevin calls out to his wife to see if she knows where the box came from, but unfortunately, women be shopping. So it's up to Kevin to solve this mystery all by himself. But unfortunately, Kevin is a kind and generous soul who always buys doors, so he doesn't have the 950 points to open the mystery box. And instead of just going and repairing windows, Kevin decides to bust out the crowbar. But it has to be one of those cheap, like €9 crowbars, because it snaps in half when he tries to use it for the one purpose a crowbar has. And Kevin is furious, he's outraged, that crowbar meant so much to him. Through clenched teeth and shaking with anger, Kevin says, "How dare you? How dare you? That was my father's crowbar! I won't let you get away with this!" That is word for word exactly what he says and how he says it before he throws the box across the room as hard as he can. After experiencing Kevin's full rage, the box finally relents and opens as it slams against the wall. And it turns out all that was in the box was tar, which Kevin is going to feel real stupid about wasting because it has so many uses, especially for a new homeowner. You can use it to waterproof a ton of stuff, and you can coat wood and some pipes in it to improve their longevity. But before Kevin can attempt to salvage any of it, the tar turns to dust and blows away in the wind of his basement. See, tar could have helped with that draft, but when Kevin goes to pick up the wooden box, it disintegrates in his hands because it no longer has the tar coating to improve its longevity. With the tar and the box both gone, Kevin thinks to himself, "Oh, that was weird," and goes to unpack another box. The smell of rotten meat suddenly fills the air of the basement as Kevin turns around to see the creature. And the story ends with Kevin encountering a beast with black skin and wide eyes that's almost as scary as his mother-in-law and was apparently contained in that box he just broke open. I love creepypasta where just inexplicably a creature shows up. Now my immediate knee-jerk reaction to this was, that's what you get for going through your wife's stuff. Not saying Kevin was snooping around his wife's stuff, but the ladies, they always got a system, they know where everything is, and if you go fucking with the system, you're inevitably going to run into a tar monster of some sort. Ladies, if you ever wonder why your husband just brings you the whole purse when you ask him to get you something out the purse, this is exactly why. But in an unprecedented turn of events, I actually went and read the original creepypasta for this one because I thought maybe there were some details left out, and yeah, there was. In the original ending, Kevin's wife Amanda comes home and doesn't find her husband anywhere, but does find a weird wooden box she doesn't recognize. Which means the box doesn't belong to her, and the real moral of the story and rule 9 of today's lecture is don't open a box. Cause you never know if it might contain an ancient evil. I meant to say this at the beginning of this segment, but this creator, Delta Studios, is still relatively new to the SFM creepypasta community. Obviously, I want you guys to go support all these creators, but Palanquin from earlier and Delta Studios here are the two I really want you to go show some love to.
That moment of hesitation probably, in retrospect, had saved me from an unknown fate.
This is the final creepypasta for Volume 2, and it may seem pretty cut and dry at first. The title says don't take the elevator at 3 a.m. That must be Rule 10. If you genuinely think that, something must be wrong with the part of your brain that recognizes patterns, because it's very rarely that simple. This creepypasta starts off with our main character explaining that he just didn't have the time to do laundry today. He was just too busy rotting in bed and doom scrolling for 19 hours straight. But he does eventually make it down to the communal laundry room in the basement of his apartment building on a late Friday night. His laundry gets done around 3 a.m., so we can assume he made it down there around 2. To our main character's credit, he does live on the 15th floor, so it is a bit of a bop to come all the way down to the basement. But once his laundry is done, he reveals a bit of information that is pertinent to proving the rule of this creepypasta is not don't take the elevator at 3 a.m.
I made my way over to the only elevator that came down into the basement in the center section.
Our narrator says this is the only elevator that comes down to the basement, meaning there are other elevators in this building that we can't prove are dangerous to take at 3 a.m. You can't draw an absolute conclusion with a sample size of 1. But if you made the conclusion that this specific elevator was dangerous and shouldn't be taken at 3 a.m., there may be some merit. Because after the doors open, the automated voice in the elevator speaker announces, "Basement going down." This unnerves the narrator because there's not supposed to be something underneath a basement. Add too much to the underground of a building and you're compromising the structural integrity. And since our narrator lives on the 15th floor, that means this whole building's basically a death trap for him. Our narrator is terrified by the prospect of this piss-poor architecture and can't will himself onto the elevator. So he stands there as the doors stay open for an uncomfortably long time. Almost a complete minute according to our narrator, and being fair to the doors, hey, you called me here, man, are you gonna get on or not? The doors do eventually close, and our narrator, after being so terrified of this elevator that he couldn't will himself to get on it for a full minute, decides, I really don't want to climb up the stairs though, I'll just wait for it to come back. You know, the top comment on this video praises this guy for being smart enough to not get into the elevator, but I think that makes this decision even worse. Ignorance can be forgiven at the end of the day, but laziness? So after pressing the button, he hears that the elevator does in fact go down. Several floors as a matter of fact, and revealed to us by the animation but not revealed to our narrator is that this is in fact a hell-elevator, because we see some occupants of hell get on the elevator, and we have to remember that hell is in fact layered vertically. From our narrator's perspective, he does hear the elevator go down several floors, open up, and he hears people shuffle onto it. Then the narrator realizes because he called the elevator to his floor, the elevator is going to come to his floor next. Who could believe it? So he sprints up the stairs to the lobby, and halfway up the stairs he hears the elevator doors open. And once he reaches the safety of the lobby, he realizes that he didn't hear them close either, but they took a while to close earlier on the basement, so that's not too surprising. And the creepypasta ends with our narrator asking, was it always that dark in the basement? And maybe that implies he invited some malicious entity from hell into his apartment building, but the way I see it, you gotta look at it from the residents of hell's point of view. You get on the hell-elevator at 3 a.m. because 3 a.m. is the only time it works. And that's very deliberate because you share the elevator with the apartment above your section of hell and you don't want to inconvenience them. But the elevator goes up to the basement, the doors open, and nobody's there. So you've already had your time wasted by the elevator going back up to the basement, but even worse, the doors on the basement level are broken and they stay open way longer than they're supposed to. If you're a demon, maybe you're trying to get to work, or maybe you're just meeting up with some friends, either way, this is not something you want to deal with. This is not how you want to start your day. If you're a tortured soul, this might make you late to your torture appointment. And I imagine the guy running in hell does not take any excuse for tardiness. You tell him the elevator took a long time, he'll probably respond with, oh, and that's my fault? All I'm saying is if I was in that situation, I might be mad enough to fuck with the lights. Tangent aside, what do you guys think is the moral of this story? Because I've already said how it can't be don't take the elevator at 3 a.m. Don't be lazy, sound advice, but too broad to be a lesson. But I do think the lesson you should take from this one is one that'll apply in both Creepypasta world and the real world. Because I'm willing to bet that about 75% of you have either a basket of laundry waiting to get put in a washer, laundry in the washer waiting to get put in the dryer, or you got a pile of clothes sitting right next to you waiting to be put away. And I want you to ask, what put our main character in this dangerous and scary situation to begin with? What did he put off doing until 2 a.m. that had him trying to take the elevator at 3 a.m.? That's right, rule number 10 and the last rule of volume 2. Just do your fucking laundry. Nobody likes doing it, and I know it's harder for some people than others, but you can't put it off forever. If you put it off until the very last minute, you are inevitably going to wind up sharing an elevator with demons and lost souls. But that's the end of Volume 2. I hope what we talked about today helps somebody out. I might do a Volume 3 eventually, but I'll be honest with you, that joke I made at the beginning had some weight to it. I kind of felt scummy making this video because that first Creepypasta video is easily my most successful one, and it just kind of felt like I was chasing that with this one. And I kind of feel scummy for that original video doing so well because it really is just me talking over somebody else's content. Which is why I'm going to end this video by asking one more time that you go give all these creators and this content a like, a comment, a view, a subscription. Just like the first video, the links are all in the description. Thanks for watching. Class dismissed.